Okay, let's talk about keying and splitting models for 3D print in Nomad. In this video, we're going to cover off the basics first of all, and we're going to look at how we would just do mechanical keying, so tiny little cylinders going into other mechanical parts, and then we'll look at a character and how we take off an arm and put a key in ready for it to be 3D printed. So let's dive right in. I'm really excited to be able to tell you about a new iPad sculpting course that we're just coming to the end of creating. It's all about Nomad Sculpt, and it will get you going with iPad sculpting even if you've never sculpted in the past ever. Let me just tell you a little bit about the course and the kind of things that you're going to find in there. We've broken the first section down into 5 easy sections over 5 hours. And the first one is just get sculpting. So this is where we get a quick overview of the interface, talk about left and right handedness, and then on to the navigation basics. The second chapter is all about the interface, and it's the largest section, so it covers all of the interface panel, all of the things like display settings, layers, pressure, symmetry, painting basics, and all about the left and right side and where everything's found on the interface. It finishes with a description of all the brushes, and that's probably the largest section and where you're really gonna have to dig down deep to understand a large chunk of brushes with lots of different uses. Then in section 3, we dive straight into the sculpting again, so this time a little bit more in depth with how we would use the most common brushes, the basics of remeshing, dynamic topology, and how to use primitives. Section 4 gives us everything we need to know about masking and why we need masking, and the brush settings for the masking, and how to extract geometry off another piece of geometry, which is one of the most useful things. The final section is painting and materials, and we look at how to add colour, how to use alphas, and how to use stamps to make your surfaces of your models and creatures and characters look exciting. So once you've got through that 5 hours of core training and you've practiced and practiced and you know most of the tools and where they are and what they do, it's then time to take a look at making an actual character. So we're going to choose a little monster, and we're going to work through everything from how to begin with references, and then how to use things like primitives to block out the character, and then how to break that scene down with all of the things you've learned in the first 5 chapters. If all that sounds exciting to you, then take a look in the description down below and have a look at how to get on our mailing list to make sure you're notified when the course is uploaded. We're very close to finishing it now. We've just got 1 or 2 things that we want to add to make it perfect, and then we're going to be able to give you what we've promised over the last few months, which is a full instructive tutorial on how to use Nomad Sculpt on the iPad and get those creatures and characters and monsters that you've always wanted to get made, and make sure you're trained to do it. So before we look at what we're going to teach today, let's just talk about the word key or keying. And in this regard, as it says there, it's fastening something in position with a pin, a wedge, or a bolt. So in molding and casting and any kind of creative industry, keying can mean putting an arm onto a body by having a shape that fits into a socket so that the arm stays in place. And that can be a dragon's wing, that can be a top half of a body to a bottom half of a body, or it can be a foot into a stand. Lots of reasons why we'd need to do key and keying. And we're doing it obviously in Nomad to go out directly to 3D printing. So if you're working on a project that involves either 3D printing or some kind of complexity with the models, you might want to remove one part of a model from another part. And it's crucial for 3D printing because that's how we would key, say, an arm into a body or a neck into a head. And we'll just go through it at a basic level first of all. So what we have here is just a basic metal looking component, and I'm going to subtract this one out of this one to get this result here. So I'll show you how to do it, and then we'll work it up on more complex models. So first of all, we want this one. Let's have a look at the models that we've got. We want this one and this one. And what we want to do is hit multiple selection, and then you can select them both. Just before we do that, I'm going to show you what sort of level we're at. So these are quite high. That's 296,000 there. And this one is probably around the same, I would have imagined. So no, this one's higher. So I've already subdivided this higher. And this can be reduced after we've done it, but you need to have it quite high when you're going to do the subtraction. And also I found that keeping the voxel mesh resolution really high as well is how this works really, really well. So let me show you what I mean. So this one, easy thing to do is come round to this view here. So I'm in orthographic, snap the view, and you can see I can push that right in. Now theoretically that's going to remove that green key out of this one on the right hand side. Don't go all the way to it because it will start cutting away and make the surface rough there. So basically we'll go all the way in, cut the hole, and then I'll remove some of the end of this with the trim brush. So if this could be any kind of mechanical part or any kind of joint or anything where you want to have one part keyed into another. So to start the process, what you do is take the first one, switch on multiple selection, and then select the second one, but then hide the second one. Make sure that you've already checked it, but the voxel resolution was high, and then just hit voxel merge, like so. And what will happen now is one will be subtracted from another. Now the first thing you'll complain about when you have a go at this, I had this quite a lot, is that the resolution just looks choppy and really broken up. Now mine isn't, because I set the voxel resolution high and I used a high resolution. If that's done now and you're happy with it, you can just use something like voxel remesh at a lower level and just remesh it back down to a decent level, and it will retain the look. So that's generally how I've been doing it. So now what you've got is the ability to move this model here, the one that we saved if you remember, and we can move that, turn the multiple selection off now. That one will move quite easily into, we'll do it in a moment, into this one. So now you know that's exactly how I did the one on screen there. And we've now done it once again to show you how to do it. But that won't fit exactly in that, because in the real world there will be, unless you're doing something like casting where there'll be some shrinkage, you've now got a real world fit that is exactly the same size, so it's too tight. So you need to just thin this one down a bit. So there's a couple of ways that I have been doing it. So first of all, go back to your orthographic again, snap the view, go to your mask cell. So just come down here to the side and go mask SCL, mask off, let's just snap it again, snap the view, mask off with mask rectangle. So hold down mask, and in fact you don't need to hold down mask, what am I talking about? Just literally drag across until it covers that area there, and then you can basically see, if you hit view now, you can see that all of the part of the cylinder is masked, which is useful. And then if you just simply take a big brush, in fact it doesn't matter what brush you use because we're going to use smooth, large brush, low intensity, and just smooth, and that just tightens that whole peg down a tiny bit, and that just gives you a tiny bit of slack going into that hole. And the last thing I do is I just go snap the view again, and I go to trim, and you want, which trim do you want? Trim rectangle, and just trim off that end. And what that'll give you is another little bit of leeway to get that, let me show you, that into there and to fit correctly. You notice there I've got the masking on, so I'll just get rid of that. That will fit in there much nicer now. Now that's obviously a cylinder, and this will rotate around. I mean, you've seen it wobble a bit there because it wasn't quite level on my part, but that's how I've been using this voxel remesh, or as a way to do an extraction. And it's very simple to do once you know about the resolutions and the levels. So let's get a little bit more complex than that. So let me just quickly make a cube and a shape for a key. So I'll just do it in time lapse so that you don't have to sit there and watch, but you know how to do this if you watched any of my videos. So give me 2 seconds to make it for you and you'll watch me do it. So we've got our 3 cubes, symmetry is on, we've gone to trim, with trim, we'll set line on. And because we've got symmetry on, we can just, just scaled it up, so my mistake. And with trim, we can just trim it off like this. Now what we need to do is do that on the other side. So we'll click view, because we want to key it from 2 angles like this. So we now need to set the symmetry. First of all, go snap view and set our symmetry. Instead of it being X, we now need Y. And we now need to come off snap view, just make sure we're on it, line tool, and we'll go like this. Now what that's given us is a traditional key. And by key, what I mean is, it's when you're in something like stop motion or sculpting, or if in a different kind of industry, you would be doing keys all the time for doing casting and 3D print. Casting for whatever you're doing with your sculpture, where it needs one part fitted into another. So we've just made a key very simply. We'll move that key back into this cube, embed it in thoroughly like that. So that's that done. So now what we now need to do is make sure that both of these two are joined. So we'll move this one up to this one, turn this one off, we don't need it. In fact, we won't turn it off. What we will do is we'll just not have it selected. And what we want to do is join that one with that one. So those two together. So how do we join them? It's quite simple. So we just use Voxel merge. We'll do it before we change any settings and see what happens. But look how rough it's gone. So yes, it's joined. Yes, it's voxelized it, but it's too rough. It's just not the level we want. So you must remember to knock this voxel resolution up. And don't worry about it being high, because we'll knock it all down once we've finished. So Voxel merge once it's high, and you get a really nice clean model then. So this is our model as we had before, that's going to extract from another surface. So this could be a shoulder going into a body, or it could be all sorts really. The reason we use a key like this with angled sides is because it will go in easier. If you put a square into a square or a cylinder into a cylinder, there's no thin end to go in first. So this is really simple now. So we just put this in. What I will do, as I've done in the previous one, is I'll just duplicate it first. And that means I can save it out here as that becomes the spare one. So of these two, we'll snap the view. We'll get as let's just snap it again. Get as close as we can without being snapped to it. So you're not doing this uber accurate, as in millimeter accurate. So we'll have to address that again with the trim tool at the end. But there, we've done that one. Now we've got that one, if you remember, and we've got this one. And what we want to do is we want to hide the one we want to subtract, which is that one. So we can come off that view now. And because we've got Voxel merge set quite high, I think it should work perfectly. If it doesn't, which actually it hasn't, we can go back. Before we do that, we can change our level of Voxel merge. So bring that right up, go back to where we were, switch on multiple selection and just Voxel merge it now, and you'll find that you get a really crisp, clean hole. So if you've got that now, I'll make it back to perspective so it just looks a little bit nicer. What you'll find now is this guy here fits properly into that key, and that's how I would do almost all of my keying for 3D print, and I've shown you examples in the start of this video. And now we'll do the next one will be a character. Now before I just move on to that, remember what I said about that. If I push that all the way in, it would get too tight, because once these surfaces meet here, that's probably too tight and you'll end up with a gap there. So with the keying, what you can do is go back and do what we did last time, which is trim, rectangle, and snip off that end there. In fact, don't do that because you'll lose everything. Do it there like that. And that gives you that ability to have, you've got a nice trimmed end there that will go in, and it will fit virtually all the way to the end there. So that's two examples of how we do. One is a circular cylindrical key, and now you've got an example of a square or a cube key. Why would you use them? Well, the first one would turn and revolve because it's a cylinder in a cylinder hole, cylindrical hole. This is a key that can't turn. So I use this all the time for things that just need to stay rock solid in one place. So this kind of thing is very, very common we use it in face replacements for puppets and for anything that's got to be absolutely keyed in really, really solidly. So let's move on to do a character. So this is our Druid Getavix. We sculpted this here in Nomad, and it's made up of a lot of complex parts. So what we need to do is think about 3D printing it. So for example, the smoke wouldn't be a huge problem because we just print that as a solid block. That wouldn't be a problem at all. Same with the cauldron. We would merge together the handles, and there's here and the cauldron itself, and we'd merge them together, no problem. So they wouldn't cause us any problems at all. The problem comes when you want to do things like arms, or where you want to do complex things that stick out like hair. So I'll just give you one example. So what we'll do is we'll hide all of these parts and we'll just leave the body and the arm, and we'll work on just those areas. Okay, so we've hidden and deleted all of those parts. So basically what we've got left is one merged model. And this is an example, but you could do this in numerous ways. So the first thing we'll do is we'll split off the arms. We'll just do one arm as an example. So we'll use a tool over here called split, and we'll check our settings up here, because what we want to do is in the split settings, we want to make sure that fill holes is selected. Simply because we want to split it off and leave the end capped off. So how do we split it? So with split, you get all of the tools the same as masking. So we'll just do it with rectangle now for simplicity. And we'll just come across here, get as close as we can to the edge without intersecting anything else. And we'll split that off. What's that given us? So that's given us our first split off model. And you can see now, oops, we've got symmetry on, which I didn't mean. We've now got a separated arm from the body. So that would be fine. You could 3D print that now, and you could glue that back on, no problem whatsoever. However, wouldn't it be good to have a key that really locks it to it? Yeah, it would. So let's do it. So first of all, we need to bring in the key. So let's find the key that we had. So we want to add a key, which we've made previously. To bring it up and scale it up. So we need to scale the key as close as we can to the joint. So let's bring it around here. We could do it manually. It's not a thing that needs any precision other than placing it like this. There's no accuracy. So we'll just bring it over here, and we want it roughly in the center of that arm. So scale it to whatever you think suits, and then embed it right into the arm like so. So that's given us now the shape that we've got is a shape that can't turn once it's in the hole, and that's because we've used a clipped off cube. So it's got four sides and it locks it in firmly once it's in. So first of all, we need to merge those two together. So just make sure your voxel remesh is large, and then merge this with this. Just hit merge, voxel merge, and that will weld this one into this one, and it hasn't lost any detail, as you can see. And now simply what we want to do is, well, you could just go in and clip it in like so, but what we want to do is just make sure we've got that arm spare. What you could also do, which we haven't done, is you could just have the block in the right place and cut it out and then attach it to the arm, but I don't recommend doing that. So we've got the spare arm there. So this one just becomes your clipping tool. So move it well into place like so. Make sure it doesn't interact. If it interacts, it will clip off more, and you don't want that. So clip it off like so, nearly there. That's nearly close enough. like so. So we've got this one and this one. So we've got the multiple selections done. So in fact, to make sure that this one is visible and not hidden, we want this one here needs to be hidden. So now you know what's going to happen. It's going to remove this one. So second one is on but hidden. And now we'll do our voxel remerge and see what happens. And there you go, much cleaner clipped model ready to be receiving this this end here. So that works really well for splitting down all of your parts. Thanks for letting me tell you about our new Nomad course. Should be dropping very soon. If you do like this kind of thing, make sure you comment on the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and you can hit the notification bell and hit all so we can let you know when we drop a new video, which is a Wednesday and a Friday. Thank you so much. Have a great week.